Cop brings notorious drug lord to his knees. The real masterminds will shock you. Before we go further, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this one. The city breathed in shadows. A cold wind snaked through the crumbling alleyways where crime had long since become part of the infrastructure. Streetlights flickered above the cracked concrete like the pulse of a dying heartbeat. Amid the silence, only the occasional hum of a distant siren reminded anyone that law still existed here. Barely. Detective Kane adjusted his collar and pressed deeper into the alley, boots crunching on gravel. The night clung to him like a second skin. His face, partly obscured beneath the hood of a torn jacket, revealed no trace of the badge tucked into his waistband. He wasn't a cop tonight. Not to the man he was meeting. Not to anyone. Kane's cover had taken 2 years to perfect. Months spent crawling through gutters, playing fixer, mule, runner, whatever it took to earn the trust of street-level operators. He wasn't just wearing the dirt of the city. He had become part of it. Tonight, it was payback. Or the beginning of it. A shadow peeled away from the graffiti-splashed wall ahead. Leo, a mid-tier dealer with more pride than power, exhaled smoke into the chilled air. "You came alone?" he asked, voice coated in suspicion. Kane gave a slow nod, stepping forward. "Always." Leo handed over a small, black duffel, stuffed, no doubt, with the kind of poison that left teenagers foaming in alleys. Kane took it without flinching. It was routine now. He was their guy. Reliable. Quiet. The kind that moved weight without drawing heat. But tonight was different. Leo didn't know it. Kane barely believed it himself. "Word is," Leo said, voice dropping to a murmur, "El Muro is moving something big. Big enough to bring in heat from Miami to D.C. Kane's eyes narrowed. Diego El Muro Morales. The name echoed like a curse among cops and criminals alike. A ghost with real teeth. For years, he'd built an empire on intimidation, silence, and fear. No phones. No fingerprints. No mistakes. Kane had heard the name whispered in dead corners of backrooms, never louder than a breath. Now it was coming from Leo's mouth. "Didn't think Morales touched street work," Kane said casually. "He doesn't," Leo replied. "But he's got partners now. New blood. People even he watches his back around." That was new. And dangerous. Kane hid the flicker of interest behind a bored shrug, handed back the bag, now empty. "I'll move the rest by Thursday." But the game had changed. What began as a cleanup operation for street scum had evolved into a slow descent toward the core of something vast. Something rotting from the top down. Back at his car, a dented Oldsmobile that reeked of smoke and bad decisions, Kane tapped a coded message into his burner. One word. Trigger. The sting had officially begun. In the safe house 2 miles west, Agent Rourke read the message on the secure laptop, her eyes flashing. "He's in," she said, barely containing her adrenaline. "He's on Morales' scent." "Morales?" asked the tech agent across the table. "That guy's Teflon. Feds have tried for 5 years. "Exactly," Rourke said. "But Kane's the kind of cop who lets his soul rot if it means finding the truth." The next day, under a sky the color of rust, Kane met Leo again. This time in a rundown laundromat that never washed anything but money. Leo was tense. Jittery. "They're watching me now," he whispered, eyes darting to the corners. "Your name's been passed up. They think you're ready." "For what?" Kane asked, slipping coins into a machine already spinning. Leo leaned in. "To meet Santiago, one of Morales' lieutenants. If he likes you, you move up." Kane stayed silent, heart hammering behind calm eyes. He was one layer away from a monster who'd swallowed entire neighborhoods without a trace. One wrong word, and it wouldn't be his badge on the line. It'd be his throat. Night fell again like a curtain of oil. The laundromat lights buzzed weakly as Kane waited behind a dryer stuffed with nothing but static. The door swung open. Santiago. Trim beard, sunglasses despite the dark, and a watch worth more than most cars Kane had driven. He said nothing at first, just stared, like he was peeling away layers from Kane's face. Looking for the lie. "Finally, Leo vouches for you." Kane didn't blink. He should. "We're moving a shipment this Friday." Quiet. No questions. "You drive, keep your eyes forward. You don't see names, don't ask who gets what." "Understand." Kane gave a single nod. Santiago paused, then handed over a second phone, untraceable. "You'll get a call. Don't miss it." And just like that, Kane was in. Back at the safe house, Rourke studied satellite feeds and facial recognition scans. Santiago's never made direct contact before, she muttered. Something's changed. Morales is pulling people in closer. Kane's voice crackled over the encrypted line. Or he's losing control. A silence followed. Both knew what that meant. When a king starts watching his throne too closely, it means the walls are closing in. And Kane? He was walking straight into the heart of the kingdom. The deeper Kane went, the more the cartel changed. What began with street deals and code words quickly evolved into encrypted messages, burner phones that rang only once, and meetings set in motion with nothing more than a flick of a lighter or a phrase scratched into the back of a matchbook. The organization wasn't just organized, it was orchestrated, like a symphony with no conductor in sight. Kane played his role perfectly. Always quiet, always dependable. He handled runs, kept routes clean, and never asked questions. That silence earned him access, first to the warehouse bosses, then to couriers who didn't speak but watched everyone like hawks. Soon, he found himself sitting in backrooms while men counted bricks of narcotics like cash registers. But it wasn't the drugs that caught Kane's attention. It was the pattern. One night, while helping load a shipment, he noticed a series of numbers scrawled on the corner of every package. Not weights, not dates. Coordinates. When he checked one on a smuggled laptop, it pinged in the middle of an industrial zone, right next to a government-owned logistics hub. He didn't need confirmation. Something bigger than Morales was in motion. Back at the safe house, Kane downloaded footage from a button camera sewn into his jacket. The images weren't spectacular, gray walls, steel crates, half conversations, but the audio captured something unusual. A voice, unfamiliar, smooth, educated, giving orders to Morales's men. Kane froze the footage. The man never showed his face, but his tone was clear. No slang, no threats. Just instructions. Efficient. Deadly. It didn't sound like cartel. It sounded like government. He forwarded the files to Agent Rourke. She called within minutes. "You sure this isn't Morales?" she asked, breath tight. "Morales doesn't talk like that," Kane replied. "This guy's different. Precise." Rourke paused. "You might be sitting in something federal. Or worse. Foreign." Kane leaned back, processing. "Whoever he is, Morales takes orders from him." 2 days later, Kane was summoned to a meeting in a warehouse near the docks. The ocean mist curled between shipping containers as if trying to smother the tension hanging in the air. Inside, Morales himself stood in front of a whiteboard scribbled with coded names and routes. This was the first time Kane had seen the legend up close. Morales didn't look like a kingpin. He looked like a former soldier. Sharp, composed, with a scar just above his left brow that gave him an air of indifference to pain. He pointed at Kane without smiling. "You. Drive the next load." Kane nodded. Morales gestured toward a map filled with marked ports, corridors, and strangely, no labels. "One wrong turn and we're buried," he said simply. No threats. No warnings. Just cold trust. That night, Kane slipped into a motel with no cameras and pulled up the encrypted data chip he'd cloned from the cartel's burner laptop. Most of it was gibberish, numbers without names, routes without cities. But one string of entries kept repeating. Phase 4, shadow clearance approved by GC. He didn't know what GC meant, but he knew it wasn't part of the known chain. Not Santiago, not Morales. Someone else. Someone at the top, or above it. Kane stared at the screen, chilled. He wasn't infiltrating a cartel anymore. He was unraveling a machine. Rourke's voice buzzed into his earpiece that night. "We ran GC through every known federal, military, and foreign contact list. Came up empty." Kane exhaled slowly. "It's an alias. Or a title," Rourke replied. "And if they're in government, they've buried themselves deep." That same night, Kane met Santiago again at a mechanic's garage that doubled as a weapons depot. The lieutenant seemed off, tense, less arrogant than usual. "They know someone's talking," he muttered while checking the safety on a rifle. "Morales is getting heat from upstairs." "Upstairs?" Kane echoed. Santiago shot him a look. "Don't ask." But Kane didn't have to. The tone said enough. Morales wasn't the top of the chain. He was a gatekeeper. And whoever was behind him didn't want light shining into their tunnels. As Santiago handed Kane a crate of weapons, he whispered, "Watch your back, hermano. You make one wrong friend in this world, and you stop being useful fast." Back in his car, Kane sat motionless. The lines were blurring. Criminals quoting military tactics. Drug runs designed like black ops. Even Morales, now so composed, so quiet, moved like a man who feared something more powerful than jail. Kane checked the rearview mirror. Was it paranoia? Or was someone already watching? In his glove box, the burner phone buzzed once. Unknown number. A message lit the screen. You've come far enough. Back off. No name. No signature. Just silence. Kane stared into the night. Somewhere in the shadows, the real architects of this empire were watching, pulling strings, covering tracks. But Kane wasn't backing off. He was getting closer. The storm had been gathering for weeks, and now it was ready to break. Detective Kane stood in the center of a decaying warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a place reeking of rust and old gasoline. Light filtered through broken panels, casting long shadows on the cracked concrete floor. Every breath he took echoed. Every heartbeat pounded like a countdown. Tonight wasn't about surveillance. It was the endgame. Hidden behind crates were tactical units, silent and still, waiting for his signal. They didn't know what Kane knew, that Morales was already here, waiting like a predator who sensed the trap but stepped in anyway. And then, footsteps. Heavy. Measured. Diego El Muro Morales emerged from the darkness, draped in a tailored black jacket, not a wrinkle out of place. He looked less like a fugitive and more like a man walking into a boardroom. Unbothered. Cold. I thought you were smarter than this, he said, stopping 10 paces from Kane. Kane didn't answer. He stared. Studied him. The face of the city's chaos stood there calm, as if he still owned every block, every cop, every secret shipment. But this time, there were no henchmen, no whispered commands, no shadows to hide behind. Just him. And Kane. Let me guess, Morales continued. You think you've won. That slapping handcuffs on me changes the game. Kane stepped forward slowly. You're done, Morales. It's over. Morales grinned. It's never over. Suddenly, motion. Morales lunged forward, fast and vicious. A blade appeared from beneath his sleeve. Kane sidestepped, grabbing his wrist mid-swing, slamming him into a pillar. The warehouse erupted in movement, SWAT shouting, boots pounding, weapons drawn, but Kane waved them off. This was personal. The two men struggled, fists cracking against ribs and steel beams. Morales fought like a man who'd survived dozens of betrayals. Kane countered with the fury of years spent watching bodies drop in the wake of Morales' empire. Kane ducked a wild punch, caught Morales by the jacket collar, and drove him to the floor. Sirens approached in the distance. Morales didn't resist anymore. He looked up from the ground, blood at the corner of his mouth, and laughed. That laugh lingered as the cuffs clicked. The next morning, headlines screamed. Kingpin captured. El Muro brought down in daring sting. Footage of Morales, escorted in chains past flashing cameras, flooded every news outlet. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. Citizens cheered. Politicians congratulated law enforcement. But something about it felt hollow. Kane watched from the precinct's media room, arms crossed. Morales never flinched. Not during the arrest. Not during the cameras. And certainly not when a reporter yelled, "Is this the end of your operation?" Morales had turned, smirked, and said 2 words, "Checkmate, maybe." Later, in the holding cell, Morales sat with that same smirk as Kane stepped inside. "No lawyers yet?" Kane asked. "They're coming," Morales replied. "A lot of them. Powerful ones." Kane studied him through the bars. "You didn't fight hard enough to win. You let this happen." Morales shrugged. "Sometimes, it pays to lose a battle." Kane leaned in. "What are you hiding?" Morales tapped his temple. "You think I built this alone? You think this ends with me in cuffs?" He stood slowly, brushing imaginary lint from his jacket. "You should be asking who takes my place. Or who is really in charge." Kane narrowed his eyes. "GC?" he asked. Morales froze for half a breath, then chuckled. "Careful, detective. You keep poking at shadows, and they'll start poking back." Kane stepped back from the cell. "I'll find them." Morales smiled wider. "I know you will. That's why they're watching you now." Outside the detention center, 2 black cars idled. Tinted windows. Government plates. Inside one sat a man with a briefcase and no name, watching Kane exit the building. He made a note. Asset compromised. Monitor closely. Far away, in a room without cameras, another man answered a secure line. "It's done," he said. "Morales is in custody." A pause. Then a response. "Good. Initiate the next phase." Let Kane feel the victory. For now. Meanwhile, Kane walked alone through a rain-slick street, past flickering lights and closed storefronts. The city felt different, like something had shifted under its skin. He should have felt triumph. Instead, he felt watched. Above him, a drone buzzed briefly, then vanished. Behind him, a shadow ducked into an alley. He kept walking, but the thrill of justice was already unraveling. Morales might be caged, but the Empire had deeper roots. Kane had merely found the door. Now he had to decide if he was brave enough to open it. The hunt wasn't over. It had only just begun. The cold hum of the interrogation room lights pulsed overhead as Detective Kane sat across from Diego El Muro Morales. The crime lord leaned back, handcuffed, unfazed. His fingers tapped a slow, deliberate rhythm on the metal table. "You still think I'm the top of the food chain, don't you?" Morales said, his voice slick with amusement. Kane didn't answer. He'd been running on adrenaline since the warehouse takedown, replaying every detail in his head. Something hadn't clicked, something off in the way Morales had surrendered too easily. That smirk hadn't faded. Not during arrest, not in the headlines, and not now. "You're not denying it," Kane finally said. "I don't have to." Morales leaned forward, voice low. "You want the truth, detective? I was never the king. I was just the crown." Kane's jaw tightened. "You're lying." Morales smiled wider. "Am I?" He gestured toward the one-way mirror behind them. "They're watching us now. Not your people. Not the press. The ones who make this city tick and tremble." Kane turned to look at the glass, suddenly aware of the vague outline of a figure standing behind it. But he said nothing. Morales chuckled. "Let me tell you something," he said, voice slow and deliberate. "This operation, it wasn't just drugs. It was leverage. Photos. Bank records. Secrets. Some of your cleanest leaders are dirtier than you can imagine." Kane scoffed. "You're just spinning lies now." "Then why," Morales said, leaning in, "did the surveillance on my cartel get pulled last month by federal order? Why did 2 witnesses disappear the night after they agreed to testify? Why did your own captain warn you to back off 3 weeks ago?" Kane's heart skipped. He remembered the conversation. His captain's uneasy eyes, the way his voice dropped when he'd said, "You're stirring things that don't want to be found." "I thought you were just protected," Kane muttered. "I am," Morales said. "But not by thugs. By suits." Flashback 4 months earlier. Kane sits in his car, watching a deal go down between cartel members. Behind him, an unmarked SUV pulls up. A federal agent steps out, FBI credentials gleaming. Kane gets out, flashing his badge. "This is my operation," he says. The agent raises a hand. "Not anymore." Kane's protests are ignored. The SUV drives off with the suspects, and the case is sealed under national security. He didn't question it then. He should have. In the present, Kane paced the dim hallway outside the interrogation room. His thoughts ran wild. He dialed his contact at Internal Affairs. "I need access to every sealed report involving Morales' cartel," he said. The voice on the line hesitated. "That data is protected." Some of those orders came from the top, Justice Department level. "Then go higher," Kane snapped. "Or I will." The line went dead. Another flashback, 2 years ago. Kane is at a charity gala. A young district judge is giving a speech. Kane shakes his hand afterward, and the judge thanks him personally for keeping the streets clean. Behind the judge, Morales stands quietly among the crowd, chatting with the senator. Kane didn't even notice him then. Back in the precinct, Kane walks into evidence lockup. Files from the Morales bust are scattered across a desk. He rifles through them until he finds a ledger, leather-bound, almost ceremonial. Inside are names not gangsters, but businessmen. Judges. 2 congressmen. The city's deputy mayor. At the end of the list, a codename GC. He turns the page. It's blank. But there's an imprint. Kane runs a pencil across the paper and slowly, like a ghost, a name emerges. Langston. His captain's last name. Later that night, Kane returns to the interrogation room. Morales looks up, still grinning. "You found something," he says. Kane sets the ledger on the table. "Tell me what GC stands for." Morales eyes the book, then meets Kane's gaze. "It doesn't matter anymore. Try me." Morales leans in, voice dropping to a whisper. "It's a network. Global. Cartels, governments, banking systems, they're all part of the same wheel. I just turned one cog." "Langston?" Kane asked. "Is he one of them?" Morales shrugged. "You already know." Kane's phone buzzed. Unknown number. One-word message. Stop. He looked at Morales. So this is how it works? You build a city on lies and let the rot fester from the inside? Morales chuckled. Not lies. Control. That's what they want. That's what they are. Kane walked out of the room, the door closing with a hiss behind him. The station suddenly felt colder. Eyes followed him that didn't before. A clerk averted his gaze. His captain's office door was shut tight, blinds drawn. The illusion of order was cracking. He now understood. Morales wasn't the monster. He was the mask. The real enemy sat in high places, untouched, unseen, and watching. And Kane? He was already too deep to turn back. The case was no longer about taking one man down. It was about surviving the storm his capture had unleashed. Rain poured over the city like judgment as Detective Kane stepped onto the courthouse steps, manila folder in hand. His eyes scanned the gathering press, microphones, cameras, questions waiting to be thrown like daggers. Inside the folder, names, numbers, locations. A network. Proof of corruption rooted deep within the very agencies sworn to protect the law. Morales was no longer the center of this story. He was merely the door that opened into something darker. Kane adjusted the collar of his coat and stepped forward. I have information, he said into the sea of static and flashing bulbs, that links high-ranking officials, law enforcement officers, and federal agents to an organized criminal enterprise. This city deserves to know the truth. His voice was steady, but he knew what came next would break everything open or bury him. Back inside the precinct, the atmosphere had shifted. Conversations hushed as Kane walked through. Officers who once nodded in respect now avoided his gaze. His captain, Langston, hadn't spoken to him in days. Rumors rippled like cracks through plaster. Kane's desk was a mess. Papers from his last 3 cases had been refiled without notice, and his login credentials had been mysteriously revoked. The internal system was closing ranks. He wasn't just an officer now. He was a threat. That night, Kane appeared on a local news segment. The anchor leaned in with careful curiosity, trying to mask her fear with professionalism. Detective, what you're alleging collusion at this level could shake the entire justice system. Are you certain of your claims? I don't allege, Kane said. I show. The footage rolled, encrypted text decoded, video of meetings between Morales and a known district judge, financial trails leading to offshore accounts under pseudonyms tied to federal names. The public gasped. The internet exploded. But inside City Hall, phones began ringing. Within 24 hours, the blowback began. Kane's access was suspended pending review. An anonymous complaint was filed questioning his mental fitness. His badge was requested back for temporary evaluation. Internal Affairs launched a formal inquiry into him. The narrative had flipped. Now he was the one under fire. He met with the only journalist still willing to listen. Joanna Price, a veteran investigative reporter with a record of poking hornets' nests. They'll either ignore you or destroy you, she said over coffee in a shadowed diner booth. But if you want to make it stick, you need something they can't bury. They already know it's true. Joanna leaned closer. Doesn't matter. They own the filter. Kane tapped the folder. Then we go around it. Days passed. Then, a leak. The full case file, names, documents, photos, surfaced on an independent journalism platform. It went viral within hours. People took to the streets. Protests surged in front of City Hall. Officials dodged questions. The mayor held a press conference claiming shock and outrage, but his name had appeared twice in Kane's ledger. Behind closed doors, the machine started rearranging itself. One judge quietly resigned. A federal agent was found missing. The headlines spun. Kane's crusade. Hero or rogue? Justice? Or just another cover? In a back alley parking lot, Kane sat in his car, watching his rearview mirror. He didn't go home anymore. He knew what came next. A black sedan pulled up. Langston got out. No uniform. No words. Just a long look, one that carried years of loyalty, now severed by truth. You should have kept your head down, Langston finally said. And let the city rot? Langston didn't answer. He just walked away. That night, Kane received a burner phone in a brown envelope. No note. Just a single file. He pressed play. A recorded conversation between Morales and an unnamed voice, discussing the next political target, payouts, manipulation of court rulings. The voice was familiar. It was the governor. The next morning, the Attorney General announced a federal investigation into the whistleblower, not the system. Kane watched the announcement on a TV through a pawn shop window, his reflection fractured in the glass. The voiceover declared him a person of interest in the compromise of national security information. He walked on, hands in his coat, the rain hiding the sweat on his brow. But far from fading into the shadows, Kane had already uploaded every file to a decentralized public archive. The evidence was no longer his to protect, it belonged to the people. Still, he knew the cost. Justice had not prevailed. Not yet. What he had done wasn't a strike, it was a spark. And as the system scrambled to protect itself, the real question remained. Would the truth bring down the fortress? Or had Kane only revealed the first layer of a lie that went deeper than anyone dared believe? If you enjoyed this story, ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing, heartfelt stories like this. Also, let us know where you're watching from, and drop your thoughts in the comments. What did you think of Detective Kane's relentless fight for justice? Were you surprised by the hidden power behind Diego El Muro Morales? If you want to see what happens next, will Kane survive the backlash? Or will the truth finally bring the system down? Tell us in the comments below. Your feedback drives the next episode, so let your voice be heard and stay tuned for more.